Well, welcome, Rocky. Thank you for taking time, and thank you for the film. And I'm excited, and we're excited to hear from you and to engage with you a little bit about the film and your own background. And so, I guess my first question is, can you tell us a little bit more about your own background, growing up as a lesbian or coming to that realization, and growing up in the church, and what that was like for you?
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's a wonderful opportunity to continue to share the film with different churches all over the world. I would consider my childhood and my upbringing pretty average. I grew up in the Midwest, the daughter of a pastor. My mother was a nurse, and everything was fine and normal. Church, two, three times a week, three sisters, loving family, and, just life as it was presented. But as I got older, and even as early as 5 years old, I knew that there was something different about me, and I didn't really know what that was or how to put words into action at that age. But what I started to recognize early on are things that I was being taught in the church wasn't really resonating with what I would consider now equality or social justice issues or things that I was being presented in the gospel or seeing in the gospel. The church has had this, at least the evangelical branch of the church that I was raised in, seemed to have contradictions, as does the Bible, that I recognized early on. Things like God, man, woman, child. That just didn't seem to me as an all loving God when and then there's a hierarchy there. And so just little things like that kind of started popping out. And then, as we saw in the film, because of my questioning, I was the troublemaker. But I learned years later, and although early on, as we saw in the film, I was about 5 years old when I saw representation on television that there were other types of people out there. And I'm like, oh, I might be this other type of person. And I was able to understand that I might have same sex attraction, which is what we call it in the church. And of course, that didn't really resonate very well. So I had this struggle for many years of trying to reconcile my sexuality with my faith, with my family, with society. And it took me years later when I went back to the church to really be able to formulate all of this and be able to say, what you call sin, I don't call sin, which is the question that I asked when I went back to church and really came head on with what I see happening in our society is actually seeping out from our church buildings, these culture war issues. And so I'm very fortunate that I did have that little bit of awareness growing up. I will also say that growing up, my family and my father, they're honorable people. As much as there are contradictions in the teachings, they walk the walk and they live the word, and to the best of their ability. They're not like some of these hate preachers that we see out there that are really spewing hate and things like that. So that was another struggle growing up. It's like, well, wait a minute, but they're good people, much like all of our loved ones, probably, who may or may not have oppressive views or views that do not line up with what some people would consider social justice. I don't want it to be an us versus them, but these are very complicated issues where it's like, I recognize certain things that just didn't sit well with me, and I just started to pursue. So I'm fortunate for my upbringing, and I'm fortunate that my dad is still on this journey with me after all these years.
So you mentioned struggling with this over years and then kind of, I guess, bringing some of the struggle back into the church and kind of renaming or reconfiguring your understanding of sin. What was helpful to you in that journey, in that struggle?
So, really, what's been helpful is there's a lot of people on this, what we call deconstruction path. And so there are many people having these conversations and being able to, the same with me. And I say that my childhood was very average and my story isn't really unique, but it's unique to me. But there are so many people who experience similar things and the same things. And the more we share our stories, the more they're amplified, the more we're able to find common ground in our stories and things like that. And so I really think it's so important to not only share, but to listen and receive that information. And that's been one of the most beneficial things for me.
So kind of conversation and relationship with others who are
Yeah.
in similar kind of struggle or
Yeah, I mean, so it's many layers, right? So I mentioned at first, like finding influencers on social media. So that really wouldn't then be actually engaging. That's a first step, I think. From there, then it is engaging with other people. You don't have to be a content creator, but actually getting into, like, there are groups that have that meetups and things like that. And so there are many avenues for people to actually get involved with like-minded people that share similar ideas or struggles or conflicts that might need some reckoning, and deconstruction is a huge one. And
Mhm.
so it's been really wonderful to see an outpour of a community that are the same, that are asking questions and not afraid to ask the questions, and saying something's not really lining up here. So that's been, yeah, pretty beneficial. But then going out and meeting people.
So why what prompted this film? I mean, you could have I mean, I hear that, there's this I guess spiritual struggle or spiritual journey and I mean, you could have made a variety of films, even other films around this issue. In other words, you could have engaged with the church and but why this particular film? What was the genesis of it?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And even within the genesis of that, the information that was put into the 92-minute presentation, including all the credits, which I hope you all watched, because there's little nuggets throughout there. And it gives us a chance to thank everyone who helped us make this movie and add a little levity to it, you know. But every single second of the picture is intentional, from laying the seeds, planting the seeds so that people want to do more work. It was also really important for us to lay the groundwork of, well, it could be this, but we know it's not a homosexual because, so we're not telling you what it is because, to be honest, it's there's so many different variations of First Corinthians 6, 9 through 10. The point is that it's complicated, and to say that you know what it means, you're not being honest. And so really just laying that groundwork to plant those seeds was really important. But this movie to me was so clear because the 1946 mistranslation in First Corinthians 6, 9 is an indisputable fact. Whether you think that the act that they're talking about is still what we consider homosexuality today or not, it's an indisputable fact. The word homosexual does not belong in ancient text. And so to be able to start, and we have now the letters from Yale University to showcase that, and if we can build from there, if we can be honest that, okay, there has been man and people's uh, influence on some of this, can we at least start from there, and where can we build from there? So this gave us a foundation where we could really make an academic, journalistic, relational approach to a real mistranslation that impacts real lives, that is not based on my feelings, my emotions, my opinions. And obviously, we have our conclusions to the data that's presented, but we wanted to make a non-biased film as much as possible that's based on the letters and based on, again, that one little nugget would be, if at the very least we can see how we use or misuse ancient text, and can we stop using it as a sacred weapon? And that would be the very basic for us if we can get that.
So were you looking to make which I guess is it which came first, the chicken or the egg? Were you looking to make a film around this issue and then decided to focus on the translation, or was it more that you learned about the mistranslation and thought, hey, maybe I can make a film about that? Or
Yeah,
it's too binary, I don't know.
for sure. So everything that happened in the film is in that timeline where I started to go back to church. I started to question the church. And this was the spring of 2017, I believe, or it was around 2017 and then it might have been 2018 because it was the summer of 2018 after I did a class in this church that I was going to. It was an Andy Stanley curriculum called starting point. And in chapter 2, they talk about sin, and I started really coming out in my church community, saying what you call sin, I don't call sin. And that really led me down a rabbit hole to meet other people in this group that started talking about different things like exegesis of the scriptures and looking at different passages to kind of pull out just all this stuff that I had never done before. And I'm like, wow, this is really interesting. So it was the summer of 2018 that I said, I would like to make a documentary, being a filmmaker already, that would be about affirming theology, to try to find affirming ground with my non-affirming parents, because it would be a useful tool to me. I'm sure it would be a useful tool to other people. And uh, after that Bible study group, I went to another course, which is mentioned in the film. I took a class on homosexuality in the Bible. That was August of 2018 or something like that. And there was a lady called Tracy in that class. And she's the one who mentioned Kathy Boldock to me for the first time. And that night also was the first time I learned the words Malakoi and arsenokoitai. And I was like, what is this, And so I went home that night and I binge watched Kathy Boldock, as we saw in the film. And I was like, wow. And then she and Ed were coming to First United Methodist Church at Hollywood and Highland, a very iconic church, in October of 2018, the same weekend my parents were coming into town. And this is Los Angeles, right? My parents had visited me in LA, I think maybe twice, and this was the second time. And I'm like, what are the chances? And so my parents I went to a Loved One Out conference, which is focused on the family, James Dobson, and against my, I'm like, I really don't want to do this, but I love you, Mom and Dad. I will go. Please stop sending me the slippery slope of gay marriage propaganda in the mail, things like that. And I went to the conference, and then it only got worse, but that's okay. My parents love me and they were trying to do their best. They saw hope. But anyway, so we went through that together, and I was like, come with me to this conference. And so we sat.
I went to this conference that made me uncomfortable. Why don't you come to this conference that might make you?
Right. It's just so we can learn from each other. And so we sat next to each other in that church in Hollywood, listening to Kathy Boldock talk about patriarchy, penetration, and procreation for the next 6 hours, and got to hear Ed's story. But in that conference, so basically I ended up filming it because I had already said I want to make a documentary on affirming theology. And what are the chances? My parents are there. Kathy has already got a ton of YouTube stuff. This is great. I'm like, I'm just going to film and see where it goes. So I paid for 2 guys to come out, and we did the top overhead shot, and I had one guy trailing around. And that's where we get my dad asking Kathy the question, so that was our first day of filming. And it was at that conference that I learned of the 1946 mistranslation. And they had just found Reverend David. They had just discovered he was in Canada, and she had just called him, so I'm like, oh my gosh, this is an amazing story. So then I asked Kathy and Ed if I could follow them and tell their story. And that took a little bit of swaying. Kathy is very busy. She knows exactly what she wants, and she already had a team following her. But I convinced her that I was the team to do it, and which is really me. I mean, like literally. And then all of the people that came to the rescue, once I started putting it together, as you saw in the credits, there's all those amazing people that really did come to the table to help us.
Sounds like one thing kind of led to another, and then it just kind of led to another kind of a domino kind of
It
thing.
was an amazing journey that we could talk about on another time. Like even all the miracles that happened along the way and all the people we met along the way. And it's like, one quick story, we were almost done technical post-production, and our fair use clearance came through from UCLA, which we got for free, which is amazing because that would have cost $25,000, whatever. And they proceeded to tell us that we needed to pay Fox News and ABC, or it was CBS. I don't really remember now at this point because it was so traumatic, but it was like $50,000 for the 2 minutes of footage of me and my dad that,
Oh, wow.
like I gave them that story years ago too. I called that into the news, and now I had to pay for it years later because we don't own it and it's not public access anywhere. So that was terrible. But like people come through, like there was, just somebody that came through and was like, how much do you need? And, we're able to help us pay for that, which is incredible. And there's story after story where it's just like, as soon as I feel like what are we going to do? Something happened that was just unexplainable.
So it sounds like there were like surprises in the process of making the film in terms of support, or were there other surprises in the process of making the film?
There are two surprises I'll share with you right now, which is really fantastic. Um, well, the one surprise is that we had Grace Point Church in Nashville come in and be one of our sponsors. And they gave us a $50,000 donation in 2022, which is incredible to
Wow.
get that kind of money from a church.
Mhm.
And Josh Scott is the lead pastor there, and Stan Mitchell started that church. If you don't know who those guys are, they both are incredible. You can look them up. And that was instrumental in our process. And so what we were doing then, it was January-ish 2022. We did some case studies and focus groups, and it was actually in Texas with where we have some of our donors, and they put this together for us. Well, the Nashville one was when we got, so we did one in Nashville, then we did one in Texas. So the Nashville, we got the $25,000 from Scott's church, Grace Point. Then we went to Texas, we went to the Dallas area, and we did another focus group fundraising event. We raised about $5,000 there. But the most important thing that we got out of that focus group was the feedback from the audience. And we had questionnaires, and everybody sat there and filled them out, and it was really helpful. And at that point, we only had Dr. Anderson and Dr. Parker in the film. And so all of the people who were agreeing with our point of view were either LGBTQ, a woman of color, or a woman, and so the audience was basically saying we accidentally made the white evangelical the bad guy in our film, and by making all my dad versus all of us. And so we needed someone that looked like my dad agreeing with us. And I was like, that's actually a really good point. Now, for me, I wanted to amplify as many marginalized voices as possible. There are a lot of male scholars out there that do wonderful work. But I really was looking for some more representation, and Dr. Parker and Dr. Anderson are fantastic. And so I was like, okay, who are we going to get now? And then to that end, it actually was more difficult to find a white male theologian to come in, and only because a lot of them, even if they agree with what we're saying, are working for institutions where they sign contracts where they are not allowed to go against one man, one woman. And so finding someone, now Trevor Thompson was one of those at one point who was in a contract, but now he is no longer working with that institution and was free to basically speak his mind, being the editor of Erdman's publishing company. So that was really tricky little place we were in there. But interesting when you think about it. But we're so grateful Trevor was what came on, and he's actually in the process of helping us, which we can ever get it done, a workbook to really break down the Glauber passages, give us some more references, again, more nuggets, more seeds for the audience to continue to work and to continue to look at this research.
So tell me about the reception of the film. Like, where has it been screened? What kind of reception have you, are there any patterns to where, I assume it's mostly churches, but maybe I'm wrong. I mean, and are they all over the world, I gather, or mostly, yeah, what has the reception of the film been like?
The film reception's been amazing. We've played to many different audiences, from institutions, educational institutions, to, yes, mostly churches. But there's also been groups that have rented out theaters or community centers to show the film. Our first year in 2023 was our festival year, and we played in over, I don't know, 60 film festivals. We
Wow.
won 25 awards in the film festival year, mostly audience awards, which was incredible. Even in places like Arkansas, we won two audience awards, and so it's just like, we love that.
Wow. Yeah.
Uh, and also, I'll tell you, the reception was from that film festival in Arkansas, and even LGBTQ film festivals in San Francisco. We had programmers who refused to play the film. And so, for both ends, the conservative and the non-conservative, whatever, would say, no, we're not going to show this film. So the conservative areas would say no because who knows? Like they just were not going to show the film, but we had people fight for us, and that was the Hot Springs Documentary Film Festival, and the programmer fought for us, and he finally won. They gave us the worst slot on a Sunday morning, 10 a.m., and we ended up selling out and winning the film festival. But there was another film festival in San Francisco, which I won't say the name because I know the programmer wouldn't refuse to watch it, and
So what,
we
even
did not
watch
get
the
in.
film? Did refuse
We
to
had
watch
a
the
we
film or
had a
screen the film?
She wouldn't watch it. She wouldn't watch the film to even consider it because, and this happened to another film festival. This one I will name, Outfest in LA. They were not interested in playing the film at all, mostly because so many LGBTQ people have been hurt by the church so much,
Mhm.
and they didn't want a Christian centric film, even though it's not, in my opinion, like we're not really pushing the gospel on anybody. We're really just going over facts, but it didn't matter to them. They didn't want anything to do with it. The film festival in San Francisco, our agent told us, we just didn't get in, and that's a shame because we would have loved to have played there. Outfest, though, we had a programmer fight for us. We got in, and again, we won the audience award at that film festival. So the message would be just give the film a chance, and so that was a little interesting in the festival season, but I didn't let any of that bother me to the same degree of after winning great film festivals and having these interesting stories come out, we still couldn't get distribution. No one would touch the film. And we had a publicist who is 42 West. They are a very large publishing company. And so they got us to all of the major distributors, and one by one just turned down, turned down, turned down.
Mm.
Or love the film, can't help you, that kind of stuff. And so we
Why do you
went
think
back
that?
to our
Why do you think that? What I mean, what is it? They're just afraid of being associated with it, or what do you
No, at
think?
first I thought that it's mostly because the industry has changed and social justice impact films are not being picked up at all
Mm.
uh, ever since COVID. And you can see the trends like on Netflix and Hulu and things like that. It's all true crime,
Mm.
celebrity based content, or big like natural disaster type stuff. They're not really swaying at all, which is a shame because we know there's an audience for this kind of stuff. Even the last movie that won the Oscar in the documentary category is a social justice film on the Israel-Palestine conflict. No one will touch that film. That might be for a little bit different reasons, but these social
We
justice
screened
films.
that film here at our church before it
Oh,
won the
great.
Academy Award. No other land. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. And so again, it's like, I just had to find alternative ways. And we went back to our top donors and said, listen, we know we're selling film festival tickets. I know we can sell theaters. Will you help us get to the theater? And so they wrote us a check for a recoupable investment, and we were able to pay them back
Mm.
for our theater rentals in New York, London, and Los Angeles to help us get recognition from peers. That was just my strategy. Like, let's see if we can find someone to put their name on the film that then can get us a Netflix or something like that. Because if I had a celebrity name on the film, whatever. We did well so we did that. We did the theatrical release. We got long listed for an Oscar and a BAFTA. We had great press, still no movement. But I mean, I still consider it a success because then in 2024, we have screened just via Eventive, which is our streaming platform on 1946themovie.com, which is, I believe, how you saw the film tonight, 500 watch parties in 25 countries in 6 months, and which is how we were able to really pay back Todd and Teresa. And since then, in 2024, we were able to take money from that profit to go on the road in America. We did a road trip across America to utilize the film as a tool for civic engagement, hitting 15 cities that are highly impacted by extremist ideology to try to showcase how the Bible has been weaponized not only for LGBTQIA plus issues. That was a very successful tour. You can see all of our tour on our YouTube at 1946 The Movie, where we did a podcast called The Culture Shift Tour. Season 1 will give you our road trip across America, which is really fun, and I encourage you all to see that. But then from there, now we're on Amazon. Our Amazon numbers are pretty good, which is the only reason why I'm able to continue to do this work.
Mm.
Honestly, like our monthly bills and keeping, our social media up and all the editing that we do, like it's a lot. But now we did just put in another $16,000 to get an aggregator and 10 language accessibility capabilities to go global on Apple TV and YouTube, which we're about to launch in the next month. So we'll be in 38 countries all over the world. Now that's just streaming, right? In person, we've been, I mean, I should share my history and impact report with you. I to so many countries in person: the Netherlands, France, Belgium, London, Singapore, Taiwan, Hong Kong.
Mm.
Where else did we go? Bangkok. And we did just receive a grant so that we can take the film to Japan, Korea, and Africa. We're going to go to South Africa and Namibia to share the film with communities there. And I'm
Well,
so
what
excited.
prompts these other countries? Uh, I mean, if I think of I mean, who's the primary audience? Is it churches? Is it the LGBT community? Is it the evangelical church? I mean, or part of all those? And what prompts some of like Bangkok?
Yeah,
Why do they want to? I mean,
yeah.
why Bangkok? I mean, I'm just picking on Bangkok, but
No, for sure. It's interesting. I know because like the Dutch was our first language accessibility, and that was our first international tour. And we were contacted by a group who saw our stuff on social media and said, we would love to bring you here. And they were able to sponsor that trip. And I was able to go and be in person with them, which is amazing. Same with Paris. We had a group called Safer Church. It was a group of young adults who came out of Hillsong and really wanted to embrace this conversation. And that was a really cool experience. My friends in France told me, us in America, we're so far ahead of having affirming tools, affirming resources for our loved ones, and they just don't. And so it was really eye opening to hear, and just such an honor to be able to provide the resource for people and their loved ones. Same thing. The reason why we're playing so many Asian countries is we had a church in Singapore, the only affirming church in Singapore, contact us. And I did get to go to Singapore with Ed and one of our graphic designer guys who's done a lot of volunteer for us, Josh Chen at Chen Designs. And the three of us just had a blast. Now, we did have to apply for a visa, and on my visa, it did say that the speaker is reminded that they're not to speak of anything controversial during their event. And we had government officials come to the screening and be present during my Q&A. So
Wow.
you can imagine that was quite intimidating, but we got a good report and everything went over well. The gentleman who runs this church has been working for LGBTQ rights in Singapore for over 30 years. So he knew the government officials and how to work all the documents, and fantastic. From there, they have gotten us into mainland China only with a screening. We haven't been there ourselves. And then they got us to Taiwan Pride last year, Hong Kong, and Bangkok. And they're working with all of those different regions to they're doing church pop ups. And Bangkok is the next one. There are a bunch of young individuals there who could be leading churches. They just don't have the resources. And I think this group in Singapore is going to provide the resources. So anyway, long story, I know, but it's amazing just to be connected with all of these people. Africa has been on the list for such a long time, and there are so many awful things happening in the name of God in Africa and Korea too. Korea is a really big hotspot for evangelical influence that is really treating LGBTQ and other minorities not so well. And so we're looking forward to an opportunity to present this material and be there in person. Hopefully we will do that next year. We just haven't scheduled it yet. So
So if I can pivot for a little bit,
yeah.
I'm curious, did about your dad in particular, since he's a, prominent person in the film, did he have any reservations about being in the film or about his kind or how or when he saw the film after it was made? I mean, what has that been like for him?
So initially he he my dad is so funny. If you asked him this question, he would say he feels he's been tricked, but he says it as a joke with a smile on his face to be in the film. Because that first day of filming, I did say we're going to be filming, we have cameras. He was very aware. But we didn't have any release forms at that point. We had signs up that said if you're in this space you will be filmed, etc. And then after we got our first round of funding in 2019, that's when we went to the Reformation Project, and my father came with us. And he, at that point, had a lot of reservations and didn't want to participate, asked to not be on camera. But at the same time, he let us pick him up at the airport and let us get a single on Sal while he was coming down the escalator and get in the van. So he had this mixed kind of, I want to be interviewed, I don't want to be interviewed. And after 2 days at the conference, he wanted to speak. And so he came down, he said, I'm ready. He signed a release form, and, he provided the interview that we see with the Bibles behind him that you saw in the film. Now, after we saw the film, and even during the whole process, it takes a lot of trust for someone to be in a documentary, period. Any kind of, all of the shows, no matter what you do, have these crazy things. The producer can edit however they want. You can't sue for defamation, whatever. Like, we didn't have crazy contracts like that, but I've seen, and it's just like, it's to protect the producers more than anyone. And they can really editing, you can have people say whatever you want. So it takes a lot of trust in the producers that you're working with to present, yourself. And so that speaks volumes, I think, to the relationship that my father and I have, that he did trust me enough to present him as an equal participant, as an equal to all of the other experts in the film, which is what we considered him. He is an expert in his field, and he will be respected and treated as such. And he felt strongly that we achieved that goal. Now, there was one scene I was concerned with, he would be, I was like biting my nails when I watched it with him, when we were going through the archives, and Ed makes a bit of a joke about, oh, I think I said it, Dad doesn't go through archives. Ed was like, is your dad going to go through archives too? And I'm like, Dad doesn't go through archives. And my dad said, you're right, I don't go through archives, after I watched it. And I was like, okay, and so at least he's able to admit different things, but it is very exhausting to go through all that stuff. But yeah, he felt he was represented fairly, and so I'll take it as a win.
Has your relationship with your dad changed as a result of the making and release of this film? Do you feel like it's just in any significant ways at all?
Well, I mean, we've spent more time together, and I know that he respects me as a creative, as an individual, as an independent thinker. Um, I wouldn't be surprised if he had more support in his heart than he's allowed to say in his position. Same thing with my mother. But it is what it is, and now I really pick my battles, and we just do relationship. There's so many things that I would like to discuss with them, and I just don't. I'll save it for one. I'll give you just like the biggest one for me is the uprising of Christian nationalism in our country and some of the dangers surrounding that. And my heart really would love to have those conversations, but his heart's not doing so well, and so because of his physical conditions and our relationship, I'm just going to let it go. And I hope our nation can heal, and I hope that I can use my voice in other ways to express how to help in that regard.
Sounds
Yeah.
hard. Sounds hard in
Yeah.
some ways.
Yeah.
What would if you were to, this may not be a fair question, but what would you want to say to, and I mean, you kind of said it through the films, but I'll ask you more directly. What would you want to say to the LGBTQ community, to the church, to yourself 30 years ago, to any of those?
Well, I mean, yeah. So, I mean, in regards to watching the film, if you're LGBTQ and you're feeling reluctant, same thing with the church, really, just give it a chance. And that, uh, Again, you don't have to really agree with us, but let's look at how we're using or misusing ancient texts and how we're treating one another. But then, most importantly, to how we're doing relationship. To that end, as well, if you are an LGBTQ person and you have a parent or a loved one or a cousin, sibling, whomever, that isn't treating you so well, it is okay to walk away. It is okay to say, this isn't healthy for me, and to not be in relationship. It only works for me and my family because, as we just discussed, we it's almost like the don't ask, don't tell, and we do it really well, which also hurts. But I choose to be in that relationship because I don't want my father to pass and not have a relationship with him. I also
You
want to
love
be
them.
someone.
I mean, you love each other, is what it sounds like.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I want to be someone who is known and not just talked about. If I kept running away, then I'm just this figure that there's these rumors around. And so, no, I can be part of the story because I'm present in that story.
Hmm.
So I would say that's an LGBTQ person. For the church, the church needs to really face a reckoning. I think the church really needs to face a huge repentance, and I know a lot of churches don't really want to recognize that or hear that, and it's a really big problem. I think I don't really know what to do about it, and I struggle with it every single day, and trying to figure out how to pivot from this 1946 movie to really helping to heal the divide in our land and try to get us back to some sort of agreeable middle where I know we can be at, and stop being so extreme on both ends. And so I would just say again to the church, like you're doing, thank you for taking the time to be here, for listening and having the conversations. I hope it resonates with you, and I hope that it can stir up more positive conversations and have that ripple effect to help heal our land. For myself, I would say I'm really proud of the work that I've accomplished. I look back and see the layers and the years and the steps and my future, and I'm encouraged. And I hope that it continues to grow. And I hope that I can continue to be used as a tool for change and encouragement.
Hmm. I just have a couple more questions and then we can wrap it up. This film was made several years ago. Um, would you make it differently now? I mean, we're in a we have a different administration. The kind of maybe the tone in our country has changed, or in this country has changed. Um, does that even though it's only just a few years ago, I don't know, what does that make
Yeah.
sense in terms
No,
of
I don't think
film?
I would change anything. I really feel strongly about the decisions we made in the film and the content that was put in. Like, some of the stuff that we didn't put in that I really wanted to put in were things like the definition of a word sodomite, and where did that word come from? Because people will say, well, it's still this or it's still that, and it's like, well, no, do you know what that you're actually saying? And but there's just no room for it. And then other things too, like the political content in there, it was very short. And I know it's Ronald Reagan and it's Republican, but again, this isn't a right versus left issue. This is an issue that of the heart, and so it just happened to be the Reagan administration with Jerry Falwell. These are facts. And so we wanted to put that in, but we really were very careful not to show DT or not to show any other really strong current things in our culture because it wasn't necessary. People get it, they can fill in the blanks. And so, again, it was just about planting seeds to see how we got here and where we're going. Uh, so, yeah, I think it's perfect.
Hmm. And are you working on any other future projects?
I'm working on a couple different projects. I was looking to do a follow-up film on trans and intersex bodies in the church, uh, uh, specifically looking at how, for example, in the Talmud, there are 8 different genders mentioned. And so gender identity and expression, even though the rabbis weren't hip to that, these are not new
Hmm.
conversations, and getting people again to kind of recognize that two spirit people exist in other cultures and things like that. Making films like this, it's a lot of sacrifice, it's a lot of personal time, it's a lot of you don't make a lot of money, and or none at all. Like 1946 is a success because we've been able to hold on and maintain the rights to be able to continue the work and have received some grants. But I think it's pretty unique. And so it's really difficult. And I don't know if I can give up another 6 years of my life to continue to try to raise a $500,000 to make a movie. Even though I really want to. My decision, I think, is to continue to put the work out in social media. We're doing another podcast season where we're exploring the difference between other countries in the United States and how they deal with LGBTQ issues. That's going to be pretty informative. We're going to be able to put in a lot of these things that I just mentioned with the Talmud and other cultures around non-binary and trans identities and express that in our podcast and on our socials. And so I think I can accomplish the same goals with less time and not having to, be under pressure to try to finish that film by 2028, which would be my goal. So I'm going to shift to do that. And then I'm working on a psychological horror film just because I need to do some scripted content and make some money with my friend. But it's about racism in America, so it still has a social justice message at the end. And so, yeah, another movie to make some money, but 1946 is going to be seen on our YouTube channel and on our socials.
Well, thank you for making this movie, and thank you for your time with us, Rocky. I appreciate it, and blessings on your future endeavors. And I hope some of us can follow you on through your podcast or YouTube or what, maybe even the psychological horror movie. I don't know.
It's
I
called
like.
Cherry Creek. If it ever comes out,
Okay.
it will, though.
I
Yeah.
saw, Get Out reminds me of a psychological horror film that has a kind of racial
Yep.
justice theme. But
Yep.
um,
You
so,
got it.
well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Craig.